Well, here he is, as promised, one half of Ray and Greg's hockey podcast, part of the Go-Goat Sports family, and of course, ESPN hockey analyst, our dear friend, Mr. Ray Ferraro. How you doing, my man?
I'm good. I'm a little foggy. Was in Philly last night and for the Devils and the Flyers, and it's always interesting when the most recognizable face in an organization wears a suit.
Right.
And so the Flyers home opener, and it was all about John Tortorella.
Yeah.
And, you know, the work that they need to do in Philly, like they've got some work ahead of them. But, you know, as Torts is, you know, it's straight ahead, it's direct, it's, you know, all his answers are that way too. And for one night, it was a good night for the Flyers. They were pretty good.
Let's reverse engineer this, Matt. Before we get into all the Canuck questions that we have, you're fresh off Philly.
Yeah.
Tell us what you saw there, and keep in mind what the Canucks are coming off of. I'm going to get into this in The Price is Right and Bruce Boudreau's coaching and all that sort of stuff. But you're right. They're not facing a Stanley Cup contender tomorrow night, yet they clearly were a little bit loose versus Edmonton. Does Bruce let them run a little bit here against probably an inferior team on paper? What should the Canucks expect from them tomorrow?
They'll get work. It's almost like they have not spent any time really on structural work in Philly. The work has been put into what their framework of a game is supposed to look like, what their framework, quite frankly, of an organization is supposed to be like. You know, even before me, but certainly when I was there and after, when you went into Philly, it was never a comfortable place. You went in there, they were big, they were physical. Like you went in there and you played the Flyer way, or they ran you out of the building. And right now, I don't know what the Flyers are, but what I saw last night was they are going to work. They're going to forecheck. They're going to play with pace. They do not have a lot of skill like that. Goals are going to have to be by committee, and it's almost like when a football team says we have a quarterback by committee, or a baseball team says we're going to use a closer by committee. That's because you don't have one. The Flyers don't have one-shot scores. Now, Travis Konechny got a couple of goals and it was terrific last night. So did Morgan Frost. But they don't have a lot of skill. I think if you play a loose game, that's the wrong way to play against Philly, because their work will generate chances. So they're banged up a bit. You know, they don't have Sean Couturier. I think Ristolainen will play. He was kind of he was close. They haven't got Cam Atkinson back. So those are a couple of good players for them. But if you play with skill and pace, that's going to be a problem right now for Philly, because they don't have both measures.
You talk about goals by committee. It's kind of what Torts had in Columbus there for a while before they added the big guns, where everybody had to chip in and you had depth of forward, and hoping that, honestly, Ray, I look at that Philly team and I kind of see some parallels between Vancouver. Like, ownership got impatient at one point. You remember, like, Hextall was building something I thought pretty good there, and then ownership got impatient and you moved on over. And it also sounds like ownership hired John Tortorella as sort of a Mr. Fix-It there, and the GM's on some thinner ice when you go back to the Torts year here, where, you know, Gillis was on thin ice and ownership quite like the cut of Torts' jib.
Yeah, you know, there is a little bit of that for sure. I mean, so Ron Hextall had accumulated a whole whack of first-round picks, and some of them are still there and some of them are not. A lot of them have not hit. Like Morgan Frost has not hit. He was the 27th pick in the draft. He's not hit. Joel Farabee he's an NHL player. Coming back, he played last night. It's his first game. He didn't play any preseason stuff. He had the Eichel surgery in the summer. So, you know, it's going to take him some time. Provorov hasn't been maybe what they thought he was going to be, because they had such high hopes. Sanheim, the same, although they signed him yesterday to $50 million. So they see growth there. The real change becomes, you get impatient. You're now signing guys to big contracts. They signed Kevin Hayes to $49 million. And then you're like, oops, we're not good enough. So now we got to get younger again. Like, if you keep switching roads, as I often say, you're never on one. It's a no plan. And so now, last night, under 25-man roster guys, they have 12 guys that are under 25 that are on their starting roster. I mean, that is really young.
Yeah.
And so it's hard. It's hard to make steps when you've got so many young guys all learning the league at the same time.
When you don't have a lot of players, Sanheim to me is a perfect example, and he's a fine player. But when you don't have a ton going for you right now, like at the NHL level, don't you find you just kind of, some clubs sign guys because that's all we got? You know, like they give him a lot of money for, you know, not a prolific defenseman. You know, like he's fine, but they give him a lot of money. But, you know, that's what they've got right now. That's what they know. And it's a lot easier to sign this player than it is to try to trade and find the next guy, right?
Well, trade and find the next guy is almost impossible.
Right.
Because you're going to trade for a guy that's the same. But another team says, maybe we don't know what he is quite yet.
They're doing the same thing. Yes.
They're doing the same thing. So we got the same contract as Mackenzie Weegar in Calgary, identical. And, Weegar's really good. I think we'll see that more so here because we'll see him more frequently than he was in Florida. He's really good. Sanheim's interesting, though, because he's still so young. Here's the problem. When guys get in young, you forget in year 4, they're 22. It's not like year 4, they're 26. Like they're still forming and they've had to play so much and be counted upon when they're just not ready to do it. It's really interesting as the league gets younger. I think there's going to be a lot of players that kind of fall into that lane.
You mentioned Frost, who did have 2 goals, and I forever root for him because I'm such a big fan of his dad, who was a longtime PA announcer at the rink there in Toronto, a radio legend in Toronto. But before we leave the Flyers, just want to ask you this, and I know Couturier won't play tomorrow, but there have been many who have drawn the parallel between Couturier's contract and Bo Horvat as a comparable, Ray. You tell me, do you think they are comparable, Couturier and Horvat?
No, I don't. I don't think they're anywhere near the same player. I think they do completely different things.
Yep.
You can't possibly think that Bo Horvat checks as well as Sean Couturier, and Sean Couturier is not going to score like I think Bo Horvat can score. And in my mind, maybe they're the same age-ish. Maybe their points have aligned, but I don't see them as the same player at all. I think it's a difficult contract because if it's like Matt Barzal's contract. I think Barzal with a little bit more comfort, like instead of trying to prove to everybody how much he's worth, he's now getting a boatload of money. I think he'll score some points. I think there is offensive upside that is clearly unrealized there. If I'm thinking about a 60-point centerman, I'm not thinking $7.5 million. I need that cap money elsewhere.
Yeah. Like
that. That's what I think as I look at guys signing. Like you can say, in 2 years, the cap's going to go up. Yeah, by $1.5 million. Like it's not going up by 8.
Yeah.
And right now, so the Canucks have $0. Toronto has 4. Tampa Bay has 33. Those 3 teams can't go for breakfast without going over the cap.
Yeah.
And so it's just so hard right now. And this is where I think, honestly, I know it can't happen because of the cap, but I would like to see a 3-man designated taxi squad that's in the American League. It's guys that are playing. None of them can make over $1 million. They're identified. And so if a team like Florida, who has no cap money, if somebody gets sick, they don't have to play short. I think it makes the league look silly. That we're gonna have teams playing with 16 skaters here pretty quickly. Because
we should clarify when Ray says 4 and 33 for those other clubs, he just means dollars, not thousands, not millions. Just $4.
4 American greenbacks. And we say Couturier doesn't score like Horvat, but he's got 2 76-point seasons, and both never hit above 61. You're quite right. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Blake, did you want to start on the Canucks file?
Well, I mean, the special teams are drawing the most ire coming out of that opening game because things went pretty well 5-on-5. They had a boatload of power play opportunities. Yes, they score one, but when you get 8, you'd ideally like that second one to help put away the other team a little bit. And, of course, the other team's got some high-powered skill on their own power play, which should be a tough power play in this league as well. So when you're comparing those two power plays, and I think, honestly, in terms of 5-man units, Ray, I would take the Canucks head-to-head with the other power plays. Great as McDavid and Draisaitl are, there's a wealth of talent on that Canucks power play unit as well. Is it just too old school for me to say move the puck around, move yourselves around more? What does the modern cross-shaped power play, what does it look like when it's rolling like thunder?
The modern power play has virtually no position. The old days where you had one guy stand out at the point and then the other defenseman would come up high, and now you have two guys there. Now that's morphed into the diamond with the guy in the bumper spot. The best power plays become so unpredictable, it's really difficult for the penalty killers to read and react to them. So when the power plays first moved to that diamond and the guy in the bumper, penalty killers they're a little flummoxed. It took them a while to figure it out. Like, how are we going to kill against this? Because it's not like anything else. The Bruins started using Patrice Bergeron in the middle. And the puck goes in, the puck comes out. The puck goes in, the puck comes out. And because he was so smart, he would put it to a spot where, it was Krejci or then Pasternak and then Marchand. It's going to the right guy at the right place. So penalty killers had to figure out, how am I getting the puck out of that bumper spot so he doesn't become so dangerous? Now I'm watching, if you're a defenseman, you're going to be at the point or you're not. You're going to move. The positions are in formation. The people don't have to be. Now, there's certain guys, you got a net front guy, I don't want him handling the puck on the sideboards. Like that. That's just not his place. And they all know who that is, right? You're like, okay, my job's here. I'm supposed to retrieve it. I'm supposed to go get it. I'm supposed to screen the goalie. I'm not supposed to handle it 40 feet from the net. But the best power plays are unpredictable. They're quick. They shoot, retrieve, work it, and shoot again. Because once you shoot it and retrieve it, now the penalty killers are moving. If it's predictable and they don't have to move, it's okay. They can handle that. Here's the one thing I will say about the other night. So they're 1 for 8 in the power play. You mentioned, Blake, if they could have get the second one, right? Which would have made them 25%. Early in the season, it's really hard to get your socks in a knot here because there are great power plays that are already 0 for 12 in their first 2 games. And that's, the Capitals are 0 for 9. They've lost 2 games. I'm sure they would have liked the power play goal somewhere along the line in those. I did Tampa and the Rangers the other day. Tampa had 3 straight power plays in the third period, down 2-1. Didn't get anything. But over the course of time, I'm going to kind of bet on Point, Stamkos, Hedman, Kucherov, and whoever their net front guy, whoever that happens.
Just figuring it out. Yes,
they'll be at 25%. But so early on, you can say in that game their power play cost them.
So we have a comment here from a listener, Calvin, and you answered part of this, but not in its entirety. Why is the power play designed around Bo? You have 3 statistically better shooters on the ice. Would it make sense to you to have other guys play in that bumper spot if they're going to be slaves to their structure? Or is that just too much change and you're better off letting guys just...
Well, last year, what was their rank last year? I don't recall.
Well, it was pretty good. And Bo was really good, too.
I think.
They were pretty good.
Nobody was really asking about Bo in the middle then.
No. He was making a meal of things in there. Like he was feasting them.
I think if we're looking at, if we want to talk analytically, it can't be over one game. It's got to be over a wider span. Last year, Horvat was in the middle. That power play would zip it around. It comes into him for the one-timer, or it would go, Miller off that left side. I like a left-hander there because they like the puck in Miller's hands. And so as he drives at that defenseman, if the defenseman cheats and tries and takes the bumper pass away, now Miller's going to shoot it. If the other forward gets up a little high on the defenseman, then he goes across to Pettersson. And if Horvat doesn't need 20 feet to shoot it, he needs 3. And so I think that plays there. And that's why if he's not there, who are you putting there in that setup? And so it just reminded me of something way, way back when the Sedins first came. I'm on Sports Talk with Dan Russell late after a game, and fan calls in and says, the Sedins shouldn't be on the power play. They're, they don't do anything. And so I said, okay, hang on. If you take them off the power play, who are you going to put on there? And they said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, now you're shorthanded. Like, you got to have a better option. Bo Horvat was part of an excellent power play. I think of the things to worry about, their special team should not, or their power play should not be one of them.
Absolutely.
Eighth in goals, ninth in percentage to correct.
I'm reminded of a football GM I know who stock answered every time coach came in, complain about so-and-so can't play. We need to replace with who?
Yeah. Look at the board. This is what we got.
Here's who we got. He's the best we got. I know these are early days, and I don't know how much you've seen of him, but what do you make of Andrei Kuzmenko?
I think there's lots to like. If I were to pick one thing that maybe will grow or hopefully grow with him, and again, he's here brand new, is that very few players can play the game with a side-to-side flow.
Yep.
Like that, you just don't have time. So I'm in Philadelphia last night. I'm watching Jack Hughes play. And, man, he's slippery as an eel. And he goes side to side all over the place because he's going 100 miles an hour. Like, nobody can quite get him in their sights to slow him down. And he slithers his way through the neutral zone. Kuzmenko, I think the growth is going to be, when he gets the puck, his first step is going to be north, not to the left or to the right. Now, sometimes you can do that, and that's a very European way, controlled way to play. But he's smart. He can move the puck. He's got a really good shot. He's big. He presents big on the ice. I would say that's the one thing I noticed that hopefully for the Canucks and for him in a couple of months will look a little different.
He's taken Besser's spot a little bit on the first power play unit. I want to bring you back even to the summer, all the way till now. And I'm not suggesting that we sow the seeds of discontent in the room, not at all. And I'm sure as a player in that room, you love it when your team looks better. And I'm sure Brock Besser sees Andrei Kuzmenko come in. We just got better. We've got another scorer to help out. But when he takes your spot on the power play, not that you dislike the guy, but does it affect you in the terms of internal pressure, that challenge? Do you need to get back on that first power play? How do you think Brock Besser views that internal competition now, do you think?
Well, I don't know Brock, so I can't really tell you, but I'll tell you it bugged me.
Yep.
And I'll give you an example. My first full year, I got off to a decent start, and I hurt my shoulder. And they called up Dean Evison. And first game's in Buffalo, and I'm watching on TV, and Dean gets 2 goals and 2 assists. He's with my line.
Yes.
Like, they basically took one small guy out and stuck another one in there. It was in Buffalo, and he got 4 points. And right away, I'm like, where do I fit?
Right.
Now I was 21, and Brock's been around the block a little bit, but for sure, you notice.
Yeah. And
it's great that the team gets better, but this is part of the internal dynamics that go on in the room, and why a coach is really a manager, and he's managing personalities as well as coaching the team. And I would say it's pretty obvious that Besser's not an afterthought, and so I that stuff tends to work itself out. But for me, it was like that. By the time Dean got his 3rd point, I was wondering where I fit.
Yeah, you're ready to skid out there with your cast on or whatever was ailing you guys.
Here's the thing, though, and we talked about this briefly yesterday. While it may create some insecurity in the deeper recesses of the minds of the players as they're in their alone time, wondering, as you say, where do I fit? Internal competition can also bring out the best of them, Ray. Like, I think that's one of the things they have going for them this year. Like, who's the man? Is it JT coming off his 99? Is it Elias? Is it, Bo, the captain? Is it Brock, the goal scorer? Is it Quinn Hughes and their number one defenseman? Like, I think there's a world here where they all push each other and get better because of it.
The best teams have it. The best, unless you're like, look, Nate McKinnon's not losing his place on the power play. Everybody else is kind of fighting for space. Cale Makar's got his spot pretty well locked away there. The internal competition's really interesting because there is a point that everybody realizes, oh, gee, we're good. And then you realize the reason we're good is because we have a whole bunch more really good players. Mm-hmm. And I might go from 18 minutes to 16 minutes, but instead of winning 2 every 5 games, now we're winning 4 out of 6. And you're like, ooh, that's a lot different. Hey, this is a lot more fun. Yeah. And so it doesn't happen right away, though, because as you're getting from A to B, somebody gets their toes stepped on. And that, I think, is one of the coach's most difficult things. I go back to talking in the finals last year to John Cooper, and I was asking him about Ross Colton, and he's like, yeah, kid scored 20 goals last year for them, all on the third line, no power play time, and can really shoot the puck. He's like, he's the one guy that probably should have had more ice this year. But he had to wait his turn. Now this year, it's not a luxury. So now's your time. So you can say, I should play more and I want to play more. When the door opens, in most cases, you better be ready for it because it'll close and somebody else will take it.
I have one last question, and it's going to be a focus with this coaching staff, which have been asked to play with more structure, particularly on the back end. What is Bruce's rep in this regard, Ray? And did you see anything Wednesday? And I realize it's a very brief and small snapshot here.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I'll start with Wednesday. No, I didn't. First
you didn't
of all,
changes. You mean you didn't see anything different?
Not necessarily. It's pretty hard when you don't have your group there.
Two defensemen, yeah.
They were band-aided together, and hell, they're just out of the blocks. What I think structure is, and I think Bruce has been really successful in an aggressive way to guys to get going, guys to join the rush, guys to quickly get moving. What I think structure is in your D zone, of course, you defend to whether you're going to play more zone or more man-to-man, whatever that is going to be each team. Man-to-man's really hard because one guy gets beat and it's a fire drill. And so teams have now, with the quickness and speed and the D getting more involved, they've kind of, protected the house more and become more of a zone type defender. To me, the structure is you check, you don't defend. You're aggressive. The difference is defending is you're back on your heels. If you think of check, you're up on your toes. So when I think of structure, it's to get the puck out of their hands fast, to eliminate on a cycle. But the structure part comes that everybody has to be in proximity so you can move the puck one time and you're out. It does you no good to defend, to check, get the puck back, shoot it out to center like the punt team, and then they come right back at you. You need to be in a structure so if that D goes D to D behind the net, he knows where his next option is. And somebody's there. He doesn't even really have to look. And I think most teams early in the year have a ways to go on that. And I would say Vancouver does too. And they wouldn't be different than other teams right now.
If you could come to my daughter's dressing room and give that speech you just did, that'd be really appreciated.
They're not quite getting that yet?
Just the structure.
Yeah, they're not quite getting that yet. No, Everybody likes to freelance. Coaching. Everybody likes to freelance.
It's clearly a coaching matter there, Ray.
That's not my team. I'm not coaching that team.
Oh, you're not.
Wow. So now he's
you're one of those,
the coach.
are you? You're one of those, Bryce.
No, that's the only team I know, Coach. Come on.
Oh, my. First of many, my friend, good to have you back on Sekeres and Price. Thanks for this. We'll talk next Friday.
You betcha. I hope everybody has a great weekend.